Do you remember them talking anything about the old schools, the first schools? I remember you were mentioning one time about your...
Well, there was one up behind up there in the, that's where your grandmother taught, up on that hill there behind where that wolf has the cottage. You know, that was the last school, like, you know, the school out here at Madawaska. And they started that, everybody drew a log or two, and they put that to get same as they did the church.
And where do you say that was?
Well,
on the road going into
going into the old MacFerson place, Alvie. That's where Dad said he went quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
And up in there to the right.
Yeah.
And they had a school up in there. That was the first school.
Oh, yes. That's just over past Harl's place. Yeah, and up on the...
Yeah.
Yes. The road used to go on around, you know.
Yeah.
The sharp turn there.
Yeah. Well, I know Jean and I found that one time up. It's just in that road that goes back into the MacFerson settlement, you know. And then you turned up in there, and there was a path. We went up in there, and there was an old...
That's where the school is now.
That's what had been the school, our last school as we know it. And then you just turned sharp to the right, and it was up on top of the hill up in there. But it was...
And that's where Celia...
That's where that's where she started to teach. And when they first came here, she had to board a month with each settler.
Oh, was that the way it was?
They boarded a month with each settler, but they didn't charge her for her board.
Oh.
But I gave you the book with the record of the first school, and you copied it, didn't you?
No, I don't think so. Was this the one that...
was in bad shape?
Yes. Yes, I took quite a bit of information out of it.
And she got about $100 a year or something, but she got her board. She boarded a month, and then she moved to the next place and boarded a month, and then she went to the next place. They done that for quite a few years.
Yeah, because I know in the one census she was boarding at the Angus MacPherson place.
And I can't figure where he lived.
No, I was asking Dad if he remembers where Angus MacPherson. I probably can get the township and lot, concession and lot number.
But he lived around here someplace, but I don't know where he lived. I have got a sneaking feeling that he lived down in there behind Nelson Thompson's.
Oh.
I'll tell you why. Mother often talked about Angus MacPherson. I don't know who he was married to, or she just liked him very much, as I said. And I remember her, she used to tell us a story about some young couple that was getting married, and I can't remember who they were. And the man was ploughing for Grandpa Bill. The boy was ploughing for Grandpa Bill. That would be where Lizzie's old place, so there wasn't. And she said, Angus walked up and down the furrow with him, talking to him, for the longest time, and longest time walking up and down talking to him. And she said her and Grandma was out doing something, and they saw it, you see, my great-great-grandmother. And she says, boy, she says, that wedding won't go ahead now. She says, he'll break them up. Apparently, he just took a kind of a delight in doing something, he'll break them up. And sure enough, he did. Sure enough, they broke up. And that was one thing she said, she said he had a very, she didn't like him, but she liked Dan, and Colin and so much.
They were big men, apparently.
Tall, very tall, yes. Of course, they were slight when I remember them because they were old then, but very tall. I was telling Gail this morning about your grandfather, Colin MacPherson. He used to live over here, and he'd come over here quite frequently. They had a road just across, a winter road. I don't think they came in the summer the same way. And he'd come over, and he never could manage to quite light his pipe with a match. Just couldn't quite handle it. He wanted a coal. Wanted a coal. Well, he'd come in, and of course now he was an old man at the time, I remember. And the old stove, and he'd open the door. And of course, before he got the coal out with the lid lifter and onto the pipe, he'd have about 3 down on the floor, burning little black holes on the floor. Yeah. And, but he was awful nice. He was a nice man. He was such a fine man.
Colin MacPherson.
Your grandfather.
Yeah.
I remember he said that, your great-grandfather, I remember one time he was going to Renfrew or something, and Dad was taking him down. And of course he didn't like to dress up. He liked to wear everyday clothes. He didn't like his Sunday clothes. Well, the girls had got him all dressed up. Your aunts were very well educated, very sophisticated, nice, fine ladies. And they got him all dressed up. So he got up to the store to meet Dad, and his collar button or something had let go. And his collar's right up here to his ears, you know, the old-fashioned collar. Dad says to Stella or Lila or some of them, or whoever had brought him up, he said, you know, maybe you better fix that collar. I think his collar's got a little, oh, never mind, Charlie, he's just gone right to hell with conceit.